Tonight, a very special evening at Golden One Center. We remember former NBA Commissioner Emeritus David Stern. In fact, all you have to do is think about David Stern and the impact he had on this great city. The address to this building, of course, Golden One Center in his honor, 500 David J. Stern walk. And David Stern passing away yesterday after complications, after suffering a brain hemorrhage in December when he was having lunch at a restaurant in New York City. Happy New Year to all of you, and we welcome you into Ford Kings Pregame Live. I am Jim Kozimor, and our own Hall of Famer here is Jerry Reynolds. And I know it's exciting to be at a great venue like this, but it's sad as well because David Stern, who had so much to do with what we have here in Sacramento, passed away. And I know it's touched you as well, JR.
Well, it really has, because I got to know Commissioner Stern over the years, obviously involved in a lot of rules and competition committee meetings with him, and just a brilliant man, no question, maybe the finest all-around commissioner in the history of sports. So tremendous loss to all of us here, especially in Sacramento.
Oh, there's no question about it. You know, it's funny, if you go back to the many draft lotteries and draft nights, David Stern would walk up to the podium and fans would begin booing, and it almost became a fun joke. He would actually ask for it at some point. But my guess is if David J. Stern walked into this building, there would not be boos that were thrown his way.
No, he was a hero here,
yeah.
and always was. I mean, really, when the team first came here in '85, obviously, I always thought Commissioner Stern very much really felt a lot of special things regarding small markets, not just Sacramento, but all the small markets. He knew how important they were to the overall league and its health, and I think sometimes a lot of the big markets didn't totally understand that, but he did.
Yeah, that's a very special thought there as well, because when you look at it, the Portlands and the Utahs and the San Antonios and the Memphis who are here tonight along with Sacramento, one-team towns, some would call them, but David Stern understood the importance of that one-team town, and knowing that this was the capital city of one of the 8 best economies on the planet, this was also strategically a smart place for him to be, but he made sure that it would happen along with Kevin Johnson, the then mayor of Sacramento. And we'll tell you, JR, I know the King. Oh, go ahead. Were you going to say something about this with Kevin and everything?
No, obviously, probably follow up on you. I mean, obviously, Kevin, truly instrumental, and I think he had a great relationship with Stern, which made it go a lot smoother and really allowed them to come together. And then, of course, get Vivek Ranadive involved, and it was, just couldn't have been more smooth.
Yep, I agree with you right there, and we hope to hear from the Kings owner, Vivek Ranadive, sometime time between now and tip-off. But we do know that the Kings have put together a tribute video for the Commissioner Emeritus, David J. Stern, and we thought you would like to take a look.
The board voted to approve the move of the Kansas City Kings to Sacramento for the 1985-86 season.
The Kings Court is now in session.
I love Sacramento. Anyone that gets Phil Jackson upset because of cowbells, I mean, that's, Phil never gets upset.
And we were able to report to you that the NBA Board of Governors voted to reject the relocation of the Sacramento Kings.
It fills me with pride because it's the story of a group of owners led by Vivek who wouldn't be deterred, and a city that stepped up to save its team.
It is a huge privilege, it's a huge honor, and I'm humbled to present to you my friend, the great David J. Stern.
Thank you, Sacramento. Thank you, Sacramento Kings. I'm deeply touched, and I'm excited by your success and your future success.
It was the essence of what teamwork could do in the context of a team and a city, and it's paying off for the city and for the league. Talk about a win-win-win. That's what we got with keeping the Sacramento Kings in Sacramento.
Ford Kings Pregame Live rolls on. Kings are home for the Memphis Grizzlies this evening, part of a 4-game homestand, and there you see David J. Stern walk. The address to Golden One Center, a beautiful facility that David Stern had an awful lot to do with. And as we get ready for a basketball game and so many other events that are held inside Golden One Center, it's appropriate for us to talk to someone who knew him extraordinarily well, and that's the owner of the Sacramento Kings, Vivek Ranadive. Happy New Year to you, sir, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. We appreciate
Happy New Year.
Thank you.
And thank you for having me.
I really appreciate it. Now, I know that you had a very close and personal relationship with David Stern. What was that relationship like for you, Vivek?
Well, David was like a father figure to me, and he was a force of nature. He was bigger than life, and he could impose his will on anyone. He was always 5 years and 5 moves ahead of everyone else.
I imagine that you have some pretty interesting stories from your interactions with him, having to deal with him in business and in friendship. Anything you'd like to share with Kings fans?
Well, David was always thinking ahead, and so when I was a co-owner of the Golden State Warriors along with Joe Lacob and Peter Guber, that's when I first got to know him, and I came up with this concept of Bollywood Night, which he loved. So once I was on a father-daughter trip with my little girl, who was a college student then, at the London Olympics. And David was always thinking ahead, so he probably thought, I might need this guy to buy a team for me one day or do something. And he knew the way to my heart was through my daughter. So what he did was he had a goodie bag delivered to my hotel room for my daughter. And then he offered my daughter his seats.
The commissioner seats?
The commissioner seats.
Wow.
For the finals, for the gold medal game.
Wow.
Yeah, so at that point, Commissioner Stern owned me. So when he called me up and he said, hey, you need to buy this team. You should have your own team. You need to save the Kings and keep them in Sacramento. I could never say no to him.
Exactly, and the rest is history, and the great history it is here for Sacramento, knowing that their team is going to be here for many decades to come. We hear so many stories about the great man David Stern, but what was it like to be in a room with him, whether it was in business or whether it was in meetings with ownership? What was his presence like?
Well, David sucked all the oxygen out of the room. He could impose his will, and he owned every room he walked into. I don't care how rich the people were, how famous they were, how big their companies were. When David Stern walked into the room, David Stern was the man. He sucked all the oxygen out. The room belonged to him.
He was the leader, there's no question about that. And he has done wonderful things for the capital city. You also did a first for the NBA. You took your team to India. Would that at all have been possible without the vision of what David Stern wanted for global basketball?
No, David Stern always had this vision to take the game global. He took it to China, he took it to Africa, and all of this, it's all David. And so the modern NBA is David Stern. Other than Dr. Naismith, he is the single most important person in the history of this game and the impact that he's had. So when I sat there in Bombay and we saw the tip-off at my hometown of Bombay, the first ever game in India, I said a quiet thank you to David Stern. I said, David, thank you.
That's a great honor, and we see some of that right now from Sign Lady. She's got her David Stern sign out for 30 years and more of NBA fantastic service that he's given. We often hear the phrase, think globally, act locally. He thought globally for the game, but he acted locally for the city of Sacramento. What was his impact on this town?
Well, David Stern loved Sacramento. He loved the city, he loved the fans, and he knew that this was a city that truly loved its basketball team. So without David Stern, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't have Golden One. We wouldn't be here with the Sacramento Kings. And one of the greatest privileges of my life was to go to his office in Midtown Manhattan, just opposite the Trump Tower, and to convey to him the message that we were going to name the street after him. And I saw tears in his eyes. He was so humble. So what I want our fans and I want the city to know is that he truly loved all of you. He loved Sacramento. He loved the fans. He loved everything that we stood for. And he was so humbled and so honored that we named the street after him.
Vivek, thank you so much for sharing those stories and sharing his vision for the game. And I know in Sacramento, everyone gives a deep thank you to Commissioner Stern, his family, to the NBA. But Vivek, Happy New Year to you. Thank you for joining us. We'll do it again very soon.
Thank you, Jim.
There you have it. Vivek Ranadive, owner of the Sacramento Kings. They play the Memphis Grizzlies. We want to get perspectives from a lot of different people. We'll do it from two guys who got to know him, one from the broadcast seat, the other one from the playing court. Courtside we go to Grant and Doug.
Quite remarkable when you think of the impact that the late David Stern had on this basketball team, this arena, this community. There would be no Sacramento Kings, Doug. There would be no Golden One Center, and downtown would look vastly different. David Stern wanted the Kings to stay in Sacramento, and without him, it doesn't happen.
Absolutely. He is one of the main reasons that right now we are standing in this building. Kings purple is still flying high, and make no mistake about it, no Sacramento proud without David Stern.
Doug, you played in this league for a long time when David Stern was the commissioner.
Yes.
What did he mean to the players?
I think he meant everything, because the ability for him to have the type of relationship, could he have an iron hand sometimes? Absolutely. But he took this game global on so many different levels, and for every player that got drafted to walk across that stage, that was the most important handshake that you had maybe in your life.
Yeah, and the money wasn't bad either, right? The salaries continuing to go up every year under David Stern.
Well, when he initially came into the league in '84, tape delayed were the games. Game 6 of the NBA Finals with Magic Johnson. $250 was the average salary, and today upwards to $8 to $10 million. So all of that is on Mr. Stern.
Kayte Hunter, Kings TV. Luke, do you have a memory or an instance, particular personally between you and David, that you could share?
Yeah, I have a few. Some that I'm not willing to share. He was good at his job, and in some of those player owner negotiation meetings that we all used to sit in, he was good. I'll leave it at that. But he was. He was always, whenever you see him out, out at a restaurant, wherever, if he was in town doing your game, it was just, you could feel him in the building. He was one of those type of people. And like I said, this league would not be near where it is right now without his vision and the way he helped globalize this game. So, just fond memories.
So as we get ready for tonight's Kings game against the Memphis Grizzlies, time for us to go courtside, bring in someone that I first met, and I knew her as Katie Christensen when she was running up and down the floor for the Phoenix Mercury, one of her many teams that she played for in the WNBA. And Katie, I know that's a special part of David Stern's legacy, is the Women's League that he wanted to bring forth for young girls to have different role models in their lives, and I know you were a big part of it.
Yeah, Coz, I was 16 years old and a junior in high school when the WNBA started. And at that time, I had no aspirations to play professionally. All I could focus on was from a little tiny town in Modoc County, trying to figure out a way to get my college education paid for. And to be able to go on and later have an opportunity to be drafted into the WNBA and play 6 seasons there, looking back on it, somebody like David Stern at that time, to believe that a women's league was important, not even just for basketball fans, but for women, for young women growing up, to have those types of role models and to be able to say, like the little boy sitting next to them in class, that they wanted to also one day play professional basketball, and to know that that was a reality, something that they could do here in this country. So many women at the time were going overseas to play, but there was a moment with David Stern. Every time that you saw him, he had a light about him, truly. I mean, he was absolutely a powerful person, but the light was a genuine kindness. I felt like he was a supporter and a fan of every player that he came across. And right after Katrina, the NBA All-Star Game was in New Orleans, and I went down as part of the WNBA contingent to work with Habitat Humanity and do all kinds of things down there in the rebuilding process in New Orleans. And I remember running into David Stern at a hotel. It wasn't even, a planned event, and he saw me, gave me a hug, knew who I was. I wasn't a Lisa Leslie or a Cheryl Swoops. I was not a star in the WNBA. I was a role player. And for the commissioner of the NBA to see me, recognize give me a hug and say hello, know me by name. It was just kind of a testament to who he was and how much he cared about the WNBA and the NBA as well.
That's a great story to share. One other element to the WNBA, not only young girls looking up to women playing the game of basketball, but for anyone who remembers the WNBA when it first got started, there were a number of times when you would walk into an arena and see young boys wearing the uniforms of their favorite female player. So a Cynthia Cooper jersey was being worn by a young boy who was in middle school, and I think that spoke an awful lot towards how young boys were accepting women in the game of basketball.
Absolutely.
And I know you saw a part of that. That was a great thing to see.
Yeah,
All right.
it was.
Thanks, Katie. We appreciate your insights into that. We'll talk to you again later after the ball game as the Kings get ready for the Memphis Grizzlies.